It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Rural Radio and its great agriculturally focused lineup. It is great to be a part of it every single weekday. Also, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast as well. Okay, it's Friday. Yes, sir-y, indeed. And we've got a great RealAg Issues panel. We've got the panel coming in here for the entire show. We've got a lot of ground to cover. And the panelists today will be Lyndsey Smith, of course, of RealAgriculture based out of Ottawa. We've got Kelvin Heppner of RealAgriculture based out of Altona, Manitoba, as well as Meagan Murdoch, who is with H&K Strategies based in Toronto. We've got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to talk about Bill C-234, get an update on whether the Senate's going to vote on those amendments. We've got to talk about Bill 282, which we heard earlier this week from Michael Harvey from CAFTA, get the panel's response to what maybe he said. We got the water report that was put out by CAPI. We're going to talk about, hey, I know the one that you're really going to want to hear about is whether or not the writing is on the wall for the Prime Minister, and will he be the leader of the Liberal Party going into the next election? There's a Liberal senator that says maybe not. And another very familiar face saying, hey, by the way, everybody over here, yes, I actually would. I am still not decided yet whether I'm going to be running for the leadership, if anybody really cares. If you have any feedback on today's show, I want your feedback. We're going to cover a number of issues here today on the show, and we got the panelists' opinion. We're going to get their perspectives, but the key is also to get yours, okay? So there's multiple ways that you can do that. You can do that through social media. We're on all the different platforms that you can possibly think of. We are a RealAgriculture on all of them. Personally, my Twitter or my X handle is Shaun Haney, ShaunHaney. Or, of course, you can email me, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg listener line. Really simple. You don't got to come on the air. If you're a little scared to talk, all you got to do is phone, press the number 3, leave me a message. That number is 855-776-6147. Hop into the conversation and let us know what your thoughts are. Whether you agree with me and the panel or not, I want to know what you have to think. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to bring in the panel, and we're going to get into the topics right after this. You're listening to RealAg Radio, of course, on Rural Radio 147.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground. We are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here for the RealAg Issues panel here on this Friday. I am looking forward to this because we got 4 segments We got a lot of time to talk and lots of topics. We'll try to get through as many of them as we possibly can. Let's bring in the panel. First up, Lyndsey Smith coming out of Ottawa, Ontario. Lyndsey, how are you doing?
Great. How are you?
Quite well. Yeah,
That's
quite
good.
well. Yeah. I was going to... What's
go
that?
ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say we had our first taste of winter, and so that was false winter though for us, and so that means this weekend we'll be running around trying to actually get ready for real winter, so that is keeping us busy, and things have sort of cleared out. So things are still very green here, and I'm quite happy.
Yeah. So is a false winter just sort of like that first little dip your toe into it, and then it warms up, and then you're like, oh, okay, that was nice, and then it like abruptly comes back.
Yeah, it's like the reminder that, hey, this is what snow is like, and it is coming. That's what we got. We got like the false winter, unlike what Kelvin is likely going to share. We got false winter. So now that was our warning, and now we have to be ready for realsies.
Yeah. Well, also here, coming out of Toronto, Ontario, don't hold it against her. It is Meagan Murdoch from HGK Strategies. Meagan, how are you?
I'm great. And no signs of winter down here, which is the way I like it.
Yeah. It's been a nice week in Toronto.
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, cool if you're in the shade, but if the sun's out, I mean, it's still a great fall day.
So my guess is, Meagan, fall is your favorite season.
I think I'd have to say spring, actually, because summer is on the horizon. Fall gets a little depressing because you know what's about to come.
It never seems long enough.
No, never. No.
Yeah.
The trees are beautiful, and then the next day all the leaves are on the ground.
Hate that. I hate the transition to winter. Okay, also joining us is Kelvin Heppner coming out of Altona, Manitoba. Kelvin, how are you?
Doing well, and yeah, like Lyndsey said, here in on the prairies, we haven't had that we haven't had that kindness of a false winter just to get ready. It snowed here a couple of weeks ago now already, and the snow is still sticking around. So I think we're into it.
Now, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, you can see us, and you'll see Kelvin's dressed very casually for this Friday, as he should be. But last night he was all dressed up. I saw pictures of Kelvin in a suit jacket, everybody. He was at the Best of Cama Awards in Winnipeg. Kelvin, did you have a good time?
It was good. I did take some dust off the shoulders of the suit jacket, put it on last night, and it was good to see a lot of familiar faces at the Canadian Agri Marketing Association big gala in Winnipeg, and a lot of listeners of RealAg Radio had the chance to chat with, and always good to get that in-person feedback and connect with people that way.
They said, keep on correcting Shaun. Is that what the push was?
Nobody said that. No.
Well,
I think that's an overstated sentiment that you feel, but I would like to recognize all the award winners. Congrats to all the award winners. There's a ton of awards handed out every year, but specifically the Agri Marketer of the Year to Colin Steen, one of your good friends, Shaun, and as well Ben Graham of Ad Farm named recognized for lifetime achievement to CAMA, and certainly Ben has played a major role in real agriculture and also the Canadian ag media industry, advertising, all marketing. Just left a huge and continues to make a big impression on Canadian agriculture.
Yeah, I wasn't able to attend last night, but I texted with both throughout the evening, and two very well-deserving people to get recognized by CAMA. So congratulations again to the both of them. Okay, let's dive into some of the issues here. It's been a very, very busy week. Kelvin, we've been talking about Bill C-234. This is the private members bill that looks to get a carve-out, an exemption. But hey, because there's exemptions for everybody now, as long as you live in the land of Canada and you're a Liberal riding. Too bad for agriculture, but we're trying to get some exemptions and carve-outs for agricultural activities like heating of barns and grain drying. We could have a vote on Tuesday.
Yeah, this multi-year effort to remove the carbon tax, the federal carbon tax from fuels used on farms, so propane and natural gas for grain drying, heating barns, greenhouses, etc. It looks like it's going to come to a head on Tuesday afternoon in the Senate, as the senators are going to be voting on whether to accept the amended bill. There was that amendment passed by the Senate Agriculture Committee a couple weeks ago, and if the Senate accepts that amended version of the bill, it would have to go back to the House of Commons, and there the government could delay it indefinitely, basically letting it die when a federal election is called. And so That's where farm groups, dozens of farm groups, thousands of individual farmers over the last week have been contacting senators across the country, asking them to vote against this amended bill. And that would clear the path for the original version, which would contain barn heating, grain drying, all of the original intended tasks and practices on farms would be exempted. That bill could then move ahead for third and final reading in the Senate. So that vote, where we're going to be paying close attention whether senators vote in favor of that amendment or choose to reject the amendment, is expected to happen around 5:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. And we actually yesterday nearly saw that scenario happen as the Senate Speaker called for a voice vote on the bill. And the Speaker indicated that the nays took the vote, which is what farm groups are wanting to see. But seeing the outcome, the government's liaison in the Senate, the government's representative in the Senate asked the Speaker to defer the vote. And so the actual official vote will now happen on Tuesday. So setting things up for some drama. And a lot of this depends, the outcome of the vote depends in many ways on who shows up. There's not always not far from perfect attendance in the Senate. And so it's a matter of getting out the vote, either side, in terms of what direction this could take.
Lyndsey, could the life of a senator.
Okay, so it's no secret that I have put my name forward many times. Okay, like this is a well-known thing that I would absolutely, like, just give me a call, guys. Like, I can step in. Why don't we have proxy votes? Can't make it? Give me a dingle. I'm like an hour away. I'll just zip on by. Anyway, I will say, like, the Senate has been, let's face it, boring for how long? And then in the past couple weeks, it has just been, I think we called it red seat high. It's been like absolutely drama after drama and all sorts of politicking happening. It's really quite remarkable and also, yeah, very frustrating. Absolutely. So we'll see what happens Tuesday.
Meagan, are you in a Liberal riding?
Of course. I'm in Toronto.
Yeah.
Toronto.
That's what I thought. So I guess, how did you write a letter to your MP asking where your carve out is and why your Liberal MP is being kind of ineffective in trying to get you a carve out for your home heating bill?
Yeah, well, I haven't written the letter yet because I don't have a lot of confidence that would happen. I think this week's in the last week, the carve out has actually just caught a lot of people by surprise. No one anticipated that this would happen. You stand outside of the Ottawa bubble and you do the calculation on, the conversation that must have been happening at the time. And it's difficult to understand how they thought that this would go over well, or perhaps, how they were going to communicate it more effectively. So there's been a lot of scrambling to try to reframe it. But I don't think it's working. And I think, the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, has specifically pointed fingers at those Liberals, perhaps in Toronto Centre and or the rest of the country, that haven't been so effective at lobbying for a carve out for their constituents, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. Do you think that the decision on Atlantic Canada carve out on home heating on the carbon tax, is this the beginning of the end for the carbon tax? Like, all of a sudden, refusing the amendments on 234 makes it a lot easier. It gives cover for those senators like Paula Simons. We're seeing Alberta and Saskatchewan saying hello, along with other areas of Canada as well. So is this the beginning of the end?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they can climb down from the carbon tax at this point. Wishful thinking, maybe. No, I think this is tinkering around the edges for potentially political gain.
Yeah, so you need to, not only do you need to live in a Liberal riding, you need to live in a Liberal riding that's in trouble, Kelvin. That's the key. That's the piece that was sort of left out this week as people were talking about it.
What happens, this is another one of those annoying details that has come up over the last week since they made this announcement. What happens in 3 years if we do see a re-election of a Liberal government and they have to reinstate that carbon tax, and the price what's it going to be in 3 years? It's not maybe quite at 170, but it's going to be quite a bit higher than it is right now. How are they going to accommodate that sudden harsh application of the reapplication of the tax after the exemption. Like there's so many details, like Meagan said, that I don't know that they thought through the consequences of the announcement last week. And I might take a different opinion than Meagan. I think this might be the beginning of the erosion. The hole has been broken in the dam here. And I think going back to C-234, that this gives cover to senators to vote against the amended version of the bill and let that bill pass, because exemptions are it's not a holy grail anymore. The dam's been broken.
True.
Think about it this way. Like, what's their messaging to Atlantic Canadians? Hey, we gave you a 3-year exemption. Vote for us so we can put the tax back on. Or are you going to vote for the Conservative MP who's saying we're going to get rid of the tax completely?
What kind of setup is that for election campaigning?
Like it would be reading the room. It would think about something that could really take the wind out of the Conservative sails. Is the Liberals do like a full 180, Lyndsey, and say we're getting rid of the carbon tax because of affordability.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting switcheroo and a puncture of the balloon. I don't see them doing it, but boy, would that be some interesting drama.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see them doing that either, but it would be, and I think what we've seen in an example this past week, whether it's the Senate or whether it's in Atlantic Canada, is that this is definitely a government that is perfectly willing to make some perhaps not well thought out decisions for political gain. So, if someone sits them down and says, look, this is what it's going to take, maybe, but there would be a lot of people in the party, I think, that would be pretty ticked off, because this is really what this party has been about for how long. So
they are trying to reframe it, though, as I said, right? So they're trying to maybe stick their finger back in the dam by saying, actually, this is a phase out of home heating fuel. And actually, we're putting heat pumps in. This is nothing really to do with that carbon tax. This is actually just working to get dirty fuel out of the system. I don't know that that's going to save them on this. Like, if it will, figuratively put the finger back in the dam so that they're not, there's no slippery slope, but they're trying.
But I agree with your point. But the back to the 234, then if that's what they're doing, then the party should have supported 234 and said, hey, we need to give time for technology to take over so that maybe we can have solar powered grain dryers. I don't think we're close to that at all, everybody. Anyway, we could have said that.
But yes,
it's
exactly.
The
It's the same logic, right? Which I sort of, very naively thought that even in the beginning of the discussion of this carbon tax, that carbon tax collected was supposed to be exactly that, used to support advancements and technology and all that, to do those things like take on heat pumps and whatever. But we've seen, and we continue to see that, like, where did it go? It's out there, but it is not being targeted and back into actually affecting change. And that's why it's ineffective.
Can I just make one quick point?
Go ahead,
Shaun? If you want to actually affect change, businesses that are making investments around this policy need to believe that it's in effect for the long term. If it's up for grabs in terms of political whim, it's not effective. Nobody's going to plan for it for the long term. So that's where the other part of this is, like, they've taken away the effectiveness or potential effectiveness of this policy.
If you want a parallel example of what you just said, Kelvin, think about EVs. And if there's going to be a political switch, say in the US, less commitment to EVs, if the Republicans do take the White House in the next election in 2024, then it's the same sort of political risk that's preventing companies from really making that investment. So it's because it's not just a change, it's like complete 180, we're going a different direction. And when you don't have the political support, it's different. It's really difficult to invest the capital. Okay, let's take a break. We've got more coming up here on the RealAg Issues Panel. Lyndsey Smith, Kelvin Heppner, and Meagan Murdoch. And we'll be right back right after this.
Whether you're a rookie soybean grower or a seasoned vet, the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com has exactly what you need to stay in the game. The latest research and the best agronomic advice from industry experts, along with local and global market coverage on demand, anywhere, anytime. Make this growing season your best growing season with the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com.
As you look ahead to the next growing season, there's a lot to consider when it comes to your crop. You need every possible advantage available to you. The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to make the best choice for you and your farm. On-demand videos with leading industry experts, available anywhere, anytime. Go into the season confident and ready with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other RealAg personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture. And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Friday. We got Meagan Murdoch from H&K Strategies, Lyndsey Smith and Kelvin Heppner of Real Agriculture. Okay, one of the other topics that we discussed this week on the show is we talked to CAFTA and got the impression that, well, not the impression, it was pretty clear, Lyndsey, that still fighting the good fight from their perspective against Bill C-282. Now, this is the bill, again, just to refresh everybody, that would limit, prevent Canada's trade negotiators in the future from putting supply management and market access on the table. CAFTA represents all the exportable commodities, says that really ties the hands of our trade negotiators going forward. And this is going to create a lot of problems, even with some of the trade deals that are already negotiated. This is one that kind of fallen out of the media cycle a little bit, but obviously CAFTA is still working very, very strongly behind the scenes on this one.
Well, and I mean, as they should, right? Is in that this is, as much as when it first came about, everybody sort of looked at it and went like, is this just, trying to drum up and pull out of the woodwork who supports supply management and who doesn't, and just see, sort of political lines and where they fell, and just see who would actually vote for it or against it. And yes, there's some discussion about, even if this goes through, that it could be changed later on, but it really does. And to CAFTA's point, it sort of it puts Canada sort of behind the eight ball on trade negotiations, where you sort of already take away a full and wholesome discussion because you've already sort of said, okay, but all of this is off the table. Well, realistically, Canada has figured out that it needs to definitely have these conversations, absolutely, but it needs to compensate its farmers, which it has. And the argument could definitely be made over the past few years that some of that compensation has gone out without necessarily the market access happening. So I feel like from a supply management perspective, we're probably still doing okay. Do we really need legislation to take it off the table? I don't think so.
Well, I know the DFC, the Dairy Farmers of Canada, they are also putting a lot of resources to trying to make this become legislation. And, from the supply management sector's point of view, they feel, and you know what, I understand where the argument's coming from, not the legislation, but the argument that, hey, we're the ones that, gave up so the rest of the commodities could keep what they had. From an agriculture perspective. But Meagan, I got to ask you, is this like one of those sort of potentially regrettable pieces of legislation where it's like people put their political flag in the ground and say, hey, we support SM, and then the next government regrettably has to deal with the consequences?
I mean, I think it's a really good example of the problems around private members' bills. They're not drafted by justice. They're not drafted as other legislation would be drafted to ensure that there are no problems or conflicts or issues with the legislation. The law clerks do support in helping to draft it, but there are often problems in private members' bills that don't quite make it through before they are presented in Parliament, which is a challenge with them to begin with. But I mean, I totally agree with CAFTA that it's a terrible idea to put this through. To Lyndsey's point, it takes supply management off the table. And so when you take a card out of your hand in order to play, something else becomes the bargaining chip at that point. There's going to always be a negotiation. So if you're pulling supply management out of that negotiation, you can't use it to leverage, then who's up next in terms of the negotiation? now is the cattle sector, the pork sector, are they now kind of front line on that, the bargaining chips that are there? Like, it just takes a bit of a card out of the negotiator's hand when they get to the table.
Yeah, Kelvin, and one of the things that Captain Michael Harvey was really focusing on was the fact that, using the example of CUSMA or USMCA, and I believe it's 2026 when the renegotiation, there's a relook at it, and there's going to be a lot of drama around this, and this is going to be a focal point for the Mexicans and the Americans to use this as leverage that, to maybe even go after SM even harder because we have this legislation in place.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where there's some people have said, well, we have all our big trade deals in place. What does it matter if this one's in place? There's no real market that wants access to our supply managed sectors, but that's not quite accurate because of the review that has to happen with the North American trade agreement in 2026. And there's a lot of uncertainty. Like you said, elections are going to be taking place in US and Mexico before then, potentially here in Canada as well. Could see changes in government, could see, certainly more protectionism brought into political races. Campaigns often induce more protectionist type announcements and policies. So that's where, there could be a lot of drama surrounding this renegotiation, and supply management and dairy policy has been one of the main sore points in the deal so far in terms of dispute resolution. And so, like you said, I think there will be a lot of attention paid to it. Right now, we don't even have clear guidelines or process in place as to how this review is going to take place. So that's one of the big things that has yet to be determined. And it may not be like this process is looking like it won't go very smoothly, just like the original negotiation of USMCA or CUSMA, because the rules aren't defined and there could be political changes and political influence on that. And so, it's a lot of drama to come on the trade front in North America in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and you know what? I heard Dave Wasserman of the Cook Political Report talk about, his numbers are showing right now a Biden-Trump election in 24 favors Trump at this point right now, especially after what's happened in Israel here this past month. And, former President Trump's talking about a 10% import tariff on everything coming into the U.S. That kind of policy will play big time when it comes to the NAFTA renegotiation, whatever, or the CUSMA US, I don't know what we're even calling it at this point, but to that whole process. So I agree, Kelvin. This looks to be very, very drawn out, and I believe firmly Canadians make this mistake. They think Trump bad for Canadian trade. Biden's like fine. That's not the case. Like that is a Canadian misconception. Not saying that Trump trade policy was good for Canada, but I don't think Biden's as good as some Canadians sort of think it is.
Not much has changed with the Biden administration on the trade front.
Exactly.
He's maintained a lot of the Trump policies, and Trump is looking at doubling down, like you said, or going even further into protectionist territory. And
the Robert Lighthizer book basically auditioning for being the USTR the second time if there is a second Trump administration, which the book we've talked about, and encourage people to check out that book. It is very interesting. Lyndsey, the Senate. Now, was this the full report? What report did we hear on the soil this week?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. It's been a very full week, you guys. So I did sit in on the Senate Committee of Agriculture and Forestry did have a meeting this week. This is sort of the step before the final report. So the Senate Committee is working on essentially hammering out that final report and putting its recommendations together based on all the fact finding they've been doing. So this meeting that I sat in on, there were there were several witnesses that had come in to discuss some things, and they were asked, what would your recommendations be? And the Senate committee will then take that and put that together. So this is on the soil health. So we did see earlier this summer, we saw senators did a tour of Western Canada. They've been looking at different aspects of soil health. This is, of course, agriculture and forestry. So there was a lot of discussion about land use. So, how many acres of trees we already have. One of the key things that they honed in on, though, was we don't actually have a good estimation of treed area on farms. and a lot of assumptions are made as to, farms are their fields, they're open, there's no trees, and that, of course, we're seeing. Well, we know it's not true, but that has sort of been the assumption from the side of, regulators and that sort of stuff. And so, so it was interesting to hear sort of some of the evidence that they've been seeing, some of the research that they looked at. There was one gentleman who was working on a project in New Brunswick that was actually mapping out tree cover and those sorts of things. So really interesting to hear some of the questions about, trees and how they're used, but also, whether or not we're actually capturing the net emissions for agriculture properly, which we are not. And there was mention as well, to that point of our earlier segment of, the carbon tax being collected isn't being returned into either agriculture programs or into technology for agriculture to capture more carbon. So it was a really interesting discussion, and this is what we'll be looking for next, is the recommendations that they come out with from the Senate committee. Yeah.
We're still waiting for the government to plant all those trees they promised to as well. There is that.
That's just the name of the program.
Yeah.
It's just the name of the program now. It's not actually the number of trees that they want to plant, Shaun.
It's like the non-GMO project. It doesn't mean it doesn't have GMOs in it. It's just a project.
It's aspirational.
Meagan, I have to ask you, how did you work in government? Like, how did you work in government?
Super good question.
Like, there must have been days you got there just like, like, just like, oh my Lord.
100%, and I can attest that then Minister of Agriculture Jerry Ritz did have a sore spot on his head from banging it on the table or wall very often, because as a farmer, it was such a juxtaposition for him to really see it on the inside and see how the sausage is made.
No, thank you. Hey, Meagan, we had an Ontario economic statement this week, and I found it curious. There was, I don't think, any mention of agriculture.
Yeah, no, it was pretty light. I did a quick scan for food, groceries, agriculture, farmer, and got crickets that turned up, unfortunately. But they did say quite a bit about housing, which I think, anybody in the agriculture sector will be a little concerned about as well, because that does relate to how much land might be given up to housing at some point. But they invested quite a bit in a new Ontario infrastructure fund. And then they put a lot of emphasis on getting more affordable housing built as well.
It's sort of like remember the Homer Simpson gif where he like goes backwards into
the bushes?
That's what it kind of feels. Hey, Kelvin, very, very quickly here. We got economic news out of the U.S. and Canada today. Jobs report, unemployment going up and job growth slowing.
Yes, unemployment in Canada up to 5.7%. That's from 5.5% last month. So over the last 6 months now, we've actually seen a 0.7% increase. And if you look back, this has only happened 6 times dating back to the 80s, and 4 of those times were during a recession. And so there is, it's not positive signs in terms of where the economy is headed right now. In the U.S., job growth slowed marginally as well. The unemployment rate ticked up to 3.9%, up from 3.8% in August and September. So, yeah, this supporting the central bank's decisions to take the pause this month on increasing interest rates again.
Interesting that you say not positive signs. I think a lot of Canadians should see these signals as positive signs of perhaps getting through these high interest rates at some point.
Well, especially with how much money we put on our credit cards. When I say we, I mean the collective we. So, okay, we're going to take a break. We've got more coming up here on RealAg Radio for the RealAg Issues Panel. More noise this week that potentially the Prime Minister could step down, as a very familiar face sort of floated his name back in the ring again. And we got a report from CARC talking about ag labor shortages and what it's costing the Canadian economy and the industry. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on Sirius XM featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at RealAgriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your On Location with RealAg Radio today.
Before you get back in the field this year, spend some time with the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com. Get all the information you need on hybrid selection, planting depth, crop inputs, and more from a wide range of industry experts. A massive library of video content is available on demand when you need it most. Spend your time outside of the field, inside the classroom, with the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio, RealAg Issues Panel. Lyndsey Smith, Kelvin Heppner, and Meagan Murdoch from H&K Strategies. Lyndsey, what's up on Monday night on The Agronomist?
Oh, great question. We're going to talk about hybrid and variety selection with pests in mind. So both seed treatment options as well as herbicide tolerance options as well. So how all those things work together. So what kind of seed treatments are you choosing? What kind of herbicide tolerant line are you going to be choosing for soybeans and canola? It's going to be a lot of fun.
I hate flea beetles.
Flea beetles are kind of jerks. Let's be honest. Also cutworms, also jerks.
Also bad.
So there you go.
Especially for people in sandy soil with, hills and knolls and
Anyway, it'll be a good one. I'm excited.
8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain. Oh, time change this weekend too, everybody.
Oh, right. This is like the good one, but it's really not because it just means it gets dark at like 4:30 very soon.
But more sleep, Lyndsey. More sleep.
Is it though? I have children. I don't think it works that way.
Well, make sure you change your clocks on Sunday. You don't want to be the wrong time for football. It starts on Sunday. 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain, The Agronomist. You can find it at realagriculture.com/live or, of course, on the Real Agriculture YouTube channel. It is hosted by Lyndsey Smith. She does a great job. It is live, and you can also get CCA and CEU credits as well for you agronomists out there, for sure. Okay. Meagan, you want to talk about I talked to Tyler McCann from Cappy earlier this week, and you want to talk about the agri-food water action plan that he talked about.
National Agri-Food Water Action Plan.
It seems like a very, very tall order, and that's a high ask for us to get on the same page when it comes to water, just even around the industry of agriculture.
Yeah, but the report released by Cappy makes, a lot of good points. It does seem so straightforward, and even to Lyndsey's comments in the prior section talking about soil and our very kind of small level of knowledge around water, around the level of trees that we have on farm. There's not a lot of data and research, and that was really one of Cappy's main points was we need to study this. We need to extract the value that we do have in water. We are a country rich with water, but if we don't respect it and treat it well and understand how to maximize it, we of course are putting it at risk as well for the agri-food sector. So they released a report. Great to see both short-term and medium and long-term recommendations. So it wasn't, just an overview, but really, Cappy putting some recommendations out there. And of course, one of them is an action plan. Just bringing all the ministers across the country together, committing to, being ambitious and collaborative towards creating an action plan as to how we safeguard and maximize water moving forward.
Yeah, and if to put to really hit on the importance of water, if you missed Rob Somerville, Alberta-based rancher, on the Farmer Rapid Fire on yesterday's show, you should go back and listen to it on the RealAg Radio podcast, because there's the consequence. He did a great job of communicating the consequences of just living in drought conditions and trying to run a cow-calf operation and not having sight on where that end goal is, what you're trying to get past, because Mother Nature keeps on moving the goalposts, for sure. More noise this week about maybe the Prime Minister, like maybe his future is kind of in doubt. Kelvin, what do you make of this? Do you actually believe this could be a thing before the next election?
I think he's in as weak a position as he's been since winning the 2015 federal election, but I'm not sure that we're that close to him stepping down or being replaced unless he all of a sudden decides on by himself, goes for a walk in the snow like his father did apparently, and decides that he's ready to be done. But we did see Senator Percy Down, longtime Liberal, say this week that he thinks it's time that the party should replace Trudeau as leader before the next federal election, and there was some allusion to February being a key time for him to make that decision. I'm not sure on the logic or explanation as to why February.
I think
it was the 40th anniversary of that happening. So, but why would that? I don't know. To me, just because it's an anniversary doesn't mean you need to make the decision then. So
that would be weird.
Yeah. So
a little bit.
I didn't quite understand that connection, but I do think the heating oil announcement that we talked about earlier in the show last week, removing the carbon tax after Atlantic Caucus members basically led an internal revolt. I think that's a sign that Trudeau has less control of caucus and of Liberal Party direction right now than he has in the past. And so people are feeling free to speak up and threaten to they're making a little bit more noise in the meeting room. And I do think he's in as weak a position, like I said, since that he's been since 2015, and it's trending in that direction.
I put a lot of signal too on the fact that we saw again this week stories about Mark Carney floating his name, that he isn't ruled out. Like, to me, that's a signal that there's a lot of talk behind the scenes on what the heck the prime minister's gonna do. Meagan, do you think Mark Carney's the guy?
Oh my gosh, I thought I read that and I just thought, oh, thanks for the update, appreciate it. I was really wondering where you were at this very moment. So I think you're right in that it's a signal of what's happening behind the scenes. I think the senator coming out, it's just a signal of maybe the chatter that's happening amongst the Liberal lobby. But maybe I'm cynical. It's very rare for a leader to step down when they should. Extremely rare. Even those that did, you could argue were pushed forcefully. Chrétien comes to mind. And I don't think they know ever when to step down. They're surrounded by supporters most often. It sounds like the Atlantic Caucus maybe gave him a taste of something different. But we shouldn't put any stock in what this senator says. He's musing at best. Nobody knows. It's akin to a shuffle. Nobody knows until the shuffle happens truly what's going to happen. And anyone in the loop on what Trudeau is thinking isn't talking to the Hill Times. So I won't hold my breath on what happens here.
Yeah, Lyndsey, I think the probability is increasing that we have a force out, because they don't want to lose. And if he's the losing horse, they're like, at some point, there's a sacrificial lamb, so to speak. See what I did that to the sheep?
I see what you did there.
Think about it. Think about it this week in Ottawa, right? Mm-hmm. Your new owner, the Senators, basically had to make it. He let the GM go.
Yes.
For some kind of questionable trade practices. Right. Now, the release in his press conference said mutually agreeable. Let's be honest. They had supper, and the new owner said, "You're fired, but I'm going to let you save face, and you can say that we both agreed." Right. I kind of see that in this. We're moving more to that happening with the prime minister.
But who's the owner in the Liberal situation?
Exactly.
There's no convention between now and then.
Donors.
Yeah. The owners of...
Oh, I said donors. Donors.
Oh, donors.
Yeah, so, yes. They have no collective power.
They would have to, right? And I guess that is the point, is that we have seen, it doesn't happen a lot, but yes, you'll see leaders that are essentially told, like, look, it's time to go. But it's quite rare. I think what's probably more likely is you would see a lot of division within the party. You would see those that fully back Trudeau regardless and will follow him straight to the next election, and then you'll have the ones that are not pleased, would like him to step down, want somebody else, or maybe they want to be leader, or want a new leader, and realistically they'll have to have their come to Jesus moment and figure out whether or not when they lose their seat, or if they lose their seat, what they do after that. Do they stick with it even if they keep it? But realistically, if I was into betting, I'd probably say that he runs in the next election as the leader. But is that the right move? I would actually say no. I think if the Liberals really want to maintain power, they would absolutely move to a different leader sooner rather than later, but I don't think they will.
Well, and Meagan, you tell me if I'm wrong, but this is that the Conservatives will not want a leadership change. And this potentially is what peaking too early looks like. You do so well, so far in front of a potential election, you give the opposite, in this case, the Liberals time to maybe do a leadership change. And then you're having to maybe restart over on some of the messaging, and you have a new opponent who is going to have a little bit of a honeymoon period, especially with some of those typical Liberal voters are on the fence that were thinking more conservative. Am I correct in that?
100%. The last thing the Conservatives want is leadership change. So I don't think they'll be pushing this narrative whatsoever, even behind the scenes. They won't want this to happen. But it's going to take a pretty significant revolt. Even Percy said it. Trudeau put the Liberals back on the map, and there is a lot of gratitude to him inside the party, despite the polls right now, for actually getting them back into government, because it was looking pretty bleak there for a while. So whether enough people come out, quietly behind the scenes to him or publicly, I don't know. I think they might let him. If they respect him and his position, they may let him run again and, seal his own fate one way or the other.
It's a bit of a what have you done for me lately kind of game. And there's questions. Kelvin, finish up before we break.
That announcement last week, again, to me was such a pivot on many fronts. What happens if Minister Guilbeault walks away from the party because he's upset with the catering to the anti-carbon tax side of things, or the switch that they've made to focusing on cost of living and climate policy gets compromised? What happens if those climate hardcore members start to not be as loyal?
Yeah.
And support in Quebec, of course, is a big part of this. They can't lose support in Quebec. They have been losing support in Atlantic Canada. At some point there, the picture becomes even more bleak than it is right now.
Politics is hard, everybody. Politics is hard. Okay. We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Unifor ratifying the deal on the St. Lawrence Seaway. We'll try to get to that, as well as President Biden south of the border making promises to keep every small farm in business while kicking off a tour in rural Minnesota. Why do we keep on promising we're going to keep every farm alive? We'll talk about that when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Some farmers say they don't have time. Some farmers say fitness is not for them. Some farmers say, I don't have time to eat right. It's time to start making changes today. Join me, Shaun Haney, and Gary Chambers as we cover all things fitness. That's the Fit Farmer Podcast, available on RealAgriculture.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to RealAg Radio, here for the RealAg Issues Panel. Good news, Unifor, the union, this week ratified the tentative deal that was negotiated between the union and the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation. So that is great news. So hopefully the Seaway is able to get back up to speed, and there's a whole bunch of ships that were backlogged and trying to get through the Seaway. So hopefully they are back up to where they want to be here by the end of the week. The St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation had said that it would take a few days, at least, I believe, to kind of clear some of the traffic jam, so to speak, that was happening. There's probably an app out there where you can sort of view all the congestion that was out there, whether or not that's clear. So if you do, take a screenshot and send it to me. Kelvin, we also saw this week President Biden was in Minnesota making a lot of promises to rural Minnesota.
Yeah, continuing with them. Well, this was the kickoff to a tour of rural America as they're trying to rally support in rural, potentially Democrat-leaning areas. I'm not sure how much room there is there, but certainly continuing with his message of increasing competition and reducing consolidation, and that includes at the farm level. Biden talking about how every family that wants to be able to farm should be able to farm, and that type of messaging, and focusing as well on consolidation in the meatpacking sector, as has been a theme over the last couple of years from his administration. So yeah, more of that messaging as they kicked off a tour in rural Minnesota. And I was in Minnesota this week too, doing an interview at a farm in Minnesota, and I missed him by just a day, but was the week to visit farms in Minnesota apparently.
Okay, so why do we make promises like that? Like, what other industry? Like, if
politics, populists, it's for getting votes, and people. We do like to hear that. We like to think that all of our family farms have an opportunity going forward and will be viable 10, 20 for the next generation type of thing. But yeah, whether you can actually deliver on it, that's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
Lyndsey, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm just like, if everyone who wants to be a dentist gets to be a dentist, like, let's just do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just.
I want to be a college football broadcaster. Where
can you make that happen, Biden?
You can be anything you want to be, Shaun.
Right.
Oh,
except that you can't.
It's not true. It's not like the dentist. Like, I would love a 4-day, 3-day work week and be a dentist.
I get, and that's just it. I get where sort of the sentiment is coming from and those sorts of things, but like, don't just make big sweeping, then just set things up so that there's an opportunity for success, and don't promise that you're going to keep everybody on the farm. It's just not how it goes. Anyway, carrying on.
Well, and the old Ronald Reagan quote, "I'm here from the government. I'm here to help."
I'm here to help. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I wish what they would do is focus on some of the regulations as governments they put in place that prevent the thing from happening that they're trying to actually make happen, Meagan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that doesn't make for a nice headline, Shaun.
Oh, right.
So that doesn't work.
It's that simple. Okay. Well, you know what? I have so many topics to get to. I think what we're going to do is we're going to roll in. Please, this is a good encouragement for everybody to check out RealAg on the weekend, because we've got a few more topics to talk about, and we're going to roll the panel into that. So if you do want to hear more from this week's RealAg Issues Panel, check out RealAg on the weekend. It's heard on Ralco across Saskatchewan on Saturday and Sunday, or you can download the podcast. Lyndsey, have yourself a great weekend.
You too.
And good luck with your false winter.
Thank you.
Meagan, all the best to you.
Thanks so much. See you later.
That is Meagan Murdoch of H&K Strategies. And Kelvin, good luck shoveling your farmyard this weekend.
Thank you. We'll also be at the hockey rink, so should be a good weekend. Take care, everyone.
It's a true Canadian. That's a true Canadian story right there, Lyndsey, isn't it? That's like
really is. Yeah.
A good rink burger and a coffee.
Yeah. And the hot chocolate's really good at the rink too. It burns your tongue.
You get that machine, you press the button, it's like it's really good stuff. You need one of those. Why don't we have hot chocolate machines in our houses? I mentioned that.
That's actually a good idea.
If you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or of course you can call the RealAg feedback line and tell us what we didn't cover or what some of your opinions are. It is 855-776-6147. Everybody have themselves a great weekend, and we'll chat with you next week. Thanks for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio.